Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are, and welcome to the webinar Balancing Innovation and Risk in the Digital Marketplace. Here is our little agenda. I have the pleasure moderating this session and welcome again and thanks for participating. With me are Don Rosen, our US lead partner, and Patrick Barnett, who is the CEO of Qumram, our technology partner in this session. My name is Rudy Blattman. I'm the managing partner of LSCP. Good to see a number of names that I have the pleasure knowing personally. As the topic we will address in this event is an evolutionary process, there will be follow-up webinars and we will keep you posted. Please be informed that we record this session in the aim to give you the opportunity to share your experience within your environment. Please use the question box at any time during the presentation and demo for the Q&A part towards the end of this session. So let's get started. You certainly remember what type of speed steam was introduced, electricity, automation. It took years. Today, we will look at what speed we are confronted with and what it will mean. New markets to call for a completely different strategy in operations, in communications, distribution, in other words, very different business models, all technology enabled, and this is why we have asked a provider to participate in this event, showing in an example about how to reach out to individual profiles and the masses. Other questions will come up. For example, what is then the difference between an e-record and evidence in the digital world? Other legal questions? What privacy for the new comfort zones, etc. So I would like to hand over to Don Rosen, and as I said, he is our lead partner, and to set the scene. Don, over to you.
Thank you, Rudy. As Rudy said, the world is changing at lightning speed, and it is a disruptive change. Take, for example, the mobile revolution, which started with the launch of the first iPhone in 2007. The previous market leaders, BlackBerry and Nokia, are either non-existent or barely existent at this point. Today, more people access the internet through their smartphones than through PCs or any other mechanism. The rise of Facebook has been dramatic. It is now the most visited site in the US and actually surpassed Google recently, even though it creates no content. Airbnb is the world's largest accommodation provider. It owns no real estate, but it offers more beds than the 100-year-old Hilton Group. Uber is the world's largest taxi company, but it owns no vehicles. Alibaba is the largest market cap retailer, and it has no inventory. You can say that these disruptive changes happened almost overnight, certainly compared to steam or electricity. And every other night, a new company is changing or attempting to change an industry. Next slide, please. Is this true of the healthcare industry as well? We believe it is. I think it's obvious that there are major transformations occurring as healthcare reforms encourage consumers to play a bigger role. The industry has been traditionally business to business, but it has to move to a business to consumer model, even though most companies are dragging their feet in doing this. They've been slow to join the digital revolution. And that is a problem when customers expect healthcare to be like any other industry, where they can have a highly personalized experience and they can use the tools that they're familiar with in other industries to evaluate their options. There are new entrants in the industry who are aware of this. People like Walgreens, retailers, technology companies like Apple, they're arriving on the scene prepared to disrupt healthcare and get a larger share of the healthcare spend. Next, please. Another example of disruption in new industries or traditionally old industries is the timekeeping industry. Switch watches were sold in 2014, a total of 29.2 million. But Apple, when they introduced their Apple Watch, sold over 1 million watches in the first 24 hours. Apple has incredible customer loyalty and a focus on satisfying customers and relentless improvement of their products, and this is paying dividends enormously. Apple is now one of the most profitable companies in the world. Next, please. More than 70% of patients who are online in the United States use the internet to find healthcare information, and more than 40% of the people who diagnose their conditions through online research had it confirmed by a physician. People are using the internet, they're using the media that they have available to them to decide how to manage their health. The more that healthcare data becomes digitally accessible, the more patients will use it to weigh and potentially reject expensive healthcare treatments. This is particularly true in the United States, where patients pay a greater percentage of the cost of their drug therapies, 25% is not unusual, than they do for other healthcare expenses such as inpatient services. Not surprisingly, consumers are demanding more information so they can apply the same cost-benefit analysis and research techniques they use to purchase cars or phones. When they purchase healthcare, they're also making more informed, rational choices about where they put their money. If companies don't join this digital dialogue and influence the conversation, they'll lose an opportunity to shape it, and they may be put on the defensive trying to refute the statements based by those that do take part. Next, please. Health authorities are moving to create data liquidity, and that means that they and others who have data available, large pools of data, whether it be big data repositories or simply outcomes data, will control a large portion of the data that's relevant to the pharmaceutical industry, which means the pharmaceutical industry will control less of it. Building trust and an authentic relationship between drug makers and patients will require sharing the bad with the good. For example, when real-world evidence points to adverse events or diminished efficacy or response rates in a particular patient population, this information needs to be communicated publicly and without delay. Next slide, please. Patients are paying more for drugs as they switch to high-deductible health plans and they face larger out-of-pocket costs for specialty products. And the divisions between pharmaceutical R&D, the Food and Drug Administration approval, and commercialization are blurring. Pharmaceutical companies can't afford to be proactive, cannot to be proactive as patients and health plans negotiate access to their products. Putting drug costs into context requires access to patient data and evidence connecting drug intervention with patient health outcomes. Evidence generation has to continue after a drug receives FDA approvals. Clinical safety and efficacy measures give way to real-world performance and demonstrated patient outcomes. Consumer expectations in healthcare have shifted in the last 5 to 10 years, due in part to experiences in other industries. Easy access to health information, increasing costs, and a desire to understand at a physical and biological level what's happening in their bodies has led to a stronger opinion about how, where, and when to deal with illnesses. Next, please. There is regulatory movement as regulators are exploring new ways to integrate patient experiences into drug review decisions, and patients are pushing for further inclusion into these processes. Now, this is problematic from a regulatory standpoint. For example, most comparative effectiveness studies and cost-effectiveness data can only be shared if an insurer or health system asks the pharmaceutical company to provide them according to the current regulations. As competition for market share increases, the ability to produce and communicate research showing that one product works better than another or saves money while providing a desired health outcome is a powerful message to insurers and providers and is a benefit to patients. But FDA leaders are concerned that financial incentives cloud industry research and promotional messaging. So even though there are steps underway to change the regulatory landscape so that it is possible to provide information about value, there will be an ongoing concern about the validity of the information being provided. And consumers may be pursuing an agenda that can run counter to conventional methods of drug development and approval. I mean, demonstrating, for example, that a tumor shrunk or that a biomarker was successfully targeted by a drug during a clinical trial doesn't necessarily mean a patient will feel any better. In chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, for example, the ability to accomplish daily tasks such as lifting children or using a hairbrush without succumbing to breathlessness can be more important to patients than a clinical efficacy number, and this kind of information has to be available to patients in making their decisions. Next, please. Life science companies are still on the sidelines in terms of digitally enabled healthcare. They need to be at the forefront of developing beyond the pill service that deliver values to patients. But despite access to unprecedented data and technologies that can be used to drive better health outcomes by influencing customer behavior, few companies are really exploring digital engagement models. The opportunity to learn more about consumers and develop better, more targeted products and services far outweighs the threat digitization presents to companies for now. But unless incumbent pharmaceutical companies move quickly, innovative competitors, such as Walgreens or Apple, may grab a greater share of benefits and a stronger sense of customer loyalty. Next, please. So what are the implications for life sciences? Patient organizations formed around specific disease areas have a keen understanding of the issues that matter most and can offer valuable insights to inform clinical trial designs and protocols. Biopharma companies should also consider the various roles new entrants are playing to support patient organizations and to drive consumer engagement and be involved in these. In May, clinicaltrials.gov listed 343 open clinical studies that included at least one patient-recorded outcome measure, according to an HRI analysis. 19 states have passed right-to-try laws in reaction to patient demands for access to new experimental therapies before the FDA declares them safe for general use. So capturing evidence in an increasingly granular level with respect to nuances in patient populations along the lines of gender, ethnic origin, environment, and consumer habits will deliver new insights in how specific patient populations respond to therapy. The purpose of this webinar is not to tell you how to deliver information, but rather that given the need to increasingly communicate with the public in non-customary ways, you're going to need tools that better capture these interactions. So today's reality is that there's a balancing act for organizations between being successful and putting your business at risk. There are 100,000 rules and regulations worldwide, and these are growing every day. Companies are faced with year-to-year increases in their compliance budgets. At the same time, the world is going digital, and you need to adapt rapidly to the digital health revolution. Most U.S. CEOs see high values in digital technologies that give better and safer customer experiences. The top 3 priorities of U.S. CEOs are customer experience, data and data analytics, and digital trust. Next, please. Digital technology trends are impacting all the relevant stakeholders and the interactions between the industry regulators and patients and providers. Certainly, aging regulatory processes are hindering industry's ability to work productively with regulatory agencies in a new health economy. New regulations with relevancy for engaging digitally are impacting all relevant stakeholders, including the regulators, industry, and patients and providers. Then consumers want to provide input into developing therapies, and they know that the information they offer is being utilized. Industry wants to innovate in using this, but the current state of the regulations is going to impede that to some degree, and certainly require that companies are extremely careful in balancing their need to innovate with their need to satisfy regulatory compliance strictures. Next, please. These are just an overview of the existing regulations which do impact digital engagement, from the FDA regulatory requirements for post-marketing submissions of interactive promotional media to the expected to become final internet social media platforms regulations, legal considerations from other organizations and industries, new legal rules in the EU regarding privacy regulations, and rules in the EU about information to patients, scope, content, channels, controls, pharmacovigilance, etc. These are all regulations that are under review, that are in a state of flux, but the industry has to be prepared to manage their adherence to these rules while at the same time innovating. Next, please. As an example, you have the UK MHRA initiative, which requires that marketing authorization holders regularly screen internet or digital media under their management for potential suspected adverse events and report on these as spontaneous reports. Next, please. Along that lines, here's an example of using social media as a data input source. Now, 35 to 40% of postings for treatment in health-related fora include potential ADR mentions. Only about 0.5% of these include a drug name and also a potential ADR. However, with 650 million users and 58 million tweets per day, this can result in a considerable number of potential ADRs. The challenge in analyzing this data is that there's little context, little structure in the language being used, and there are misspellings and query limits and different terminology used for the same drug in multiple cases. So one of the potential solutions for this was the use of sentiment analysis on the repositories of information in Twitter, for example. Some of our team did a first attempt to demonstrate the feasibility of using sentiment analysis using digital media monitoring to gain insight into the clinical use profile of 2 recently approved melanoma treatments. The high-level analysis showed the sentiment analysis has the potential for showing differences between the 2 selected test products, as well as information about similar treatments. The challenge in doing this, of course, is to gather data to mine while achieving and demonstrating regulatory compliance. And that is a segue into our next session. Rudy, back to you.
Well, thank you, Don, for showing part of the scope we all as a society, industry, and regulators are faced with. Many opportunities, not only regulatory, but business that is encouraging in this environment where there are challenges as well. Review this session together with your team, and we will come back in the question and answer session. So let's look at a potential technology provider, Qumram AG. Over to you, Patrick.
Thank you, Don, and thank you, Rudy, for having the opportunity to be here with you on the webinar and to present Qumram. Good morning and afternoon, wherever you are. My name is Patrick Barnett. I'm the CEO of Qumram, which is a provider of web archiving, social media records management, and session replay solution. In the following section, I will present to you how Qumram is used by healthcare organizations, demo a specific customer use case, and wrap my part with examples from other industries. Qumram provides a solution for session recording and replay across digital channels, like for example, web, mobile, or even social media. The area of use is grouped in 3 applications. First, to ensure compliance. Second, and create evidence. Second is to detect and prevent fraudulent behavior across these channels. And lastly, to improve the customer experience and gain deep customer insights. In healthcare, we have the following experience. With the University Hospital of Zurich, we record user access to Oracle Health platform, and we create proper and visual evidence for accessing critical patient data. This is important for the university to ensure that their modern patient platform is secured and the patient data is safe. Another customer of us, which is eClinical Health, who provides with ClinPal a digital clinical trial platform, we ensure regulatory compliance, but also improve the customer experience and provide deep customer insight. This is the case we will show in a demo just a little bit later. Let me give you a bit better understanding of ClinPal and what ClinPal is doing. ClinPal provides a platform for electronic informed consent for clinical trials. Their intention is to transform clinical trials to be more modern, efficient, and patient-centric. Today, the platform is already transforming clinical trials and is in use in multiple studies, ranging from very small with 50 patients to very large with 10,000 and more patients. ClinPal has been adopted by several organizations, again, ranging from patient recruitment companies and research institutions to several top 10 pharmaceutical companies. 2 examples of clinical trials are Verco trial for Mendor medical devices and a trial for Sanofi, the Liberty Asthma Quest, which is running at the moment. To give you the context about the ClinPal demo, let me first give you the goals of the partnership between eClinical Health and Qumram and frame the demo you will see shortly. The challenge eClinical Health faces is exactly what you heard from Don before. It's balancing the regulatory requirements and additionally gaining patient insights. We call that compliant insights. Additionally, to the audit trail, ClinPal wanted to have evidence along the process and across the digital channels. The process starts, as you can see in the bottom, starts with study campaigns like the one from Verco on Facebook, which attracts the patients on the clinical trial info page, where they can pass a pre-screener. At the end, ClinPal wants to gain more and deeper insight about the conversion rate of patients joining the info page and going through the pre-screener. These 2 parts will be shown now. For that, I'm going to switch my screen. I'm going to show a demo which was recorded before the session so that we can look to a video instead of doing a live demo here. So what you can see here, this is the dashboard of ClinPal. Here in that example, this is for the doctor. So what he sees is that the patient has requested to join the trial. This is our CTO, Simon Scheurer. So this is just a demo page with demo data and not real data because as you understand, we can't show that for data privacy reason. So what the doctor here can do is he can show Qumram evidence and see what the user been studying on the website on that info page, and then also what he filled out on the pre-screener. So what you see here is on the top, this is the Qumram solution. It looks like a video player. And what we're doing is we're replaying the session from Simon Scherrer, the user which was part or which took part of the pre-screening. So you see how he's moving his mouse. You see what kind of information he's looking at and what he's reading, and also the information he's not looking at. This is especially important in cases where there is important information which need to be read and also agreed on, so that you can prove that the person was informed about potential risks. This is the info page, right, of ClinPal. It's the demo system. You see now here the user clicking to take part into that clinical trial study. So the next phase is then he's on that pre-screener. It's a large form which goes through multiple qualified questions to qualify the patient for the study, the trial here. So again, you see how he's moving through the application. You gain a lot of insight also about your application and the entire customer experience here in that case. You see where he's hesitating, like the irregular meal schedule. He was hesitating between yes and no. And you gain, again, a lot of deeper customer insight about his specific behavior. Our solution goes even so far that we're recording every keystroke, and we can see where someone is changing text or is doing any kind of mistakes. The solution is not only used to improve the customer experience and to create evidence for compliance reason, but often is also used in fraud cases where it's to document and detect and even prevent fraudulent behavior of users. So again, session's gonna end here, right? You see the person typing in all his information, and we're gonna see in the other demo that if he would now stop and stop the session and not send the information, then he will be a lost patient. So what the solution additionally provides is analytics capability, like heat maps, where you see in a visual in visual where the person was clicking or where the person was moving with his mouse. So you can aggregate that data through all your patients which went through the pre-screener, which gives you a good overview on where people are hesitating, where people are clicking, where people are looking at in your application. Let me give you another example, another demo. This is again ClinPal. This is about ClinPal to gain deeper insight into the customer behavior and also getting more analytics around where they lose the patient in their entire conversion from entering the info page and then going through the pre-screen. So what we've been doing here is a funnel. We defined a funnel saying a person joins the splash page, the info page. We see that this is just pure demo data, 24 joined, and we're seeing that we're losing 4 of them, which is 16%. And then the form was dissected in multiple form section, and we're seeing in that funnel where we're losing the people. So this is highly valuable for ClinPal because it gives them an immediate overview on where they stand on their conversion from bringing attracting patients on Facebook through campaigns on their info page, and then also qualifying them for the trial. So in that example, right, we're going into the irregular meal where we've seen before the person which was hesitating about irregular meal, and we see that we're losing 2 sessions there. So we can click on the form section. We see now 2 sessions or 12 sessions continuing and 2 sessions which we're losing. And now what we can do is we can do the same thing. We can open the session and re-look at the session, review the session, and see what the patient was doing and where he was stopping. Again, demo data, you're gonna see, right, Cyril Barnett being my son here. So this is just demo data. What you see is that he filled out almost all the information, and at the end, he decided to not to take part of the clinical trial, not being part of that study here, which somehow is a shame, right? Because he was a perfect patient. He filled out all the right questions, and it's somehow lost. So what you can use Qumram to is you can gain insights, go back and retarget these people, right, for a later study or even for the same study to go back. Let me go back to the slides and share the slides here. As you saw, we're recording all the information, but also user interactions to document who saw what. This is relevant to ensure regulatory compliance across all your digital channels. We provide also the capabilities, not only in web or mobile, but we provide also the capabilities of social media records management. What we do is recording also all social engagements, and that can be Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, or almost any other social media platform you can envision. And what we can do is create evidence which can be archived and preserved for a long time, 7, 10 years or longer. I think important is to understand the difference, right, between social media monitoring and social media records management. Like Don was explaining in the case which was done by LCP to use social media's monitoring, sentiment analysis to analyze kind of the data to read something out of it. Don also mentioned that the difficulty is, right, to create the evidence and to record all these data somehow. Why? Because someone can easily delete his content from Twitter, and then it's what you're missing is having kind of the proof point that there was a data out there. Like I was saying, we're not doing sentiment monitoring or sentiment analysis, but we're just a recording tool to create the evidence. The main case story here is to govern what all the employees of a company do, and all on all the social channels, posting, commenting, and all the other things, right? Including extraction and feeding into the analysis is what we can provide. This is key to react before an alert even happens. So look out for this topic because we're gonna have a specific webinar to come together again with our partner LSCP here, and we're gonna come back to you also for digging more into that details, and we're willing to do also in-house sessions. Qumram has many customers, especially from other industries, mostly regulated industries like banking, insurance, and government. Let me give you 3 examples, right, on how we help to ensure compliance, prevent fraud, and improve the customer experience. The Swiss Federal Foreign Agency, the FDFA, is the first agency to achieve compliance with the Swiss Federal Audit Oversight Authority. There's a policy for web and social media and how you need to keep that for the future. But additionally, benefits for FDFA is to retain invaluable knowledge in their global and constantly changing digital environment. For them, it is very important that they can record and store that information to go back in the future and see what they've been publishing in the past. UBS is a different case. UBS case is all about fraud detection and prevention for customer identifying data. They have to protect their most critical data, which is all related to their banking customers. So Qumram records globally all sessions accessing any kind of customer identifying data from internal employees and does an analysis of potential fraudulent behavior with a business intelligence solution to prevent exactly fraudulent behavior, but also to protect people, right, for being accused wrongly about potential fraudulent cases. The last one, around improving customer experience, is about a healthcare insurance called CSS here in Switzerland. It is about better customer service, and they've been able to achieve that due to 50% reduction of the average customer service call duration. And what they also achieved was a 60% increase of first call resolution. That led to tremendous lower costs, right? Due to, like the customer was stating, 6,000 hours efficiency gain every month. So handing over back to you, Rudy, for the rest of the webinar today.
Well, thank you, Patrick. I think that was an interesting view on a specific topic that can be considered part of the patient recruitment. Informed consent as being a module of ClinPal. But am I correct, Patrick, that Qumram is an integrated part of ClinPal?
Yes, we're part of their solution, so we're they're using us to record their platform, and absolutely, we're part of their entire offering, and the customer, the user, doesn't see any difference.
And coming back to your slide about records management, we understand that for each archiving element, you have an audit trail, like it's outlined in Part 11.
Yeah, so what we're normally doing in these cases is we're recording what's happening on the social media channels. And because we want to leverage the investments the customer already been doing in the past, right? All of them normally use potentially even a DoD certified records management solution or a CFR Part 21 kind of solution. So what we're doing is we're integrating the content properly in these records management system so that they have one legal archive and not creating another silo. And that adds tremendous value to our customers because not only it's faster being up to speed, but it is, right, they have one single source of truth, which is their core backend system. And this is what we've been doing for a healthcare insurance here, integrating as an example into IBM FileNet or into OpenText records management. But it can be any kind of solution like EMC Documentum or other ones used by the customer.
We will get to that webinar that part of the webinar in a special session. But let's take a moment to look at some of the questions that have come in. One very attentive participant is asking, how would Qumram avoid a Nestle event in Europe? Would you act as a virtual and global compliance tool, and how would you go about it?
Let me probably explain what the potential Nestle event is. I assume it's what's actual in the news, right? Nestle had a campaign in Germany running on Twitter where they had a hashtag Ask Nestle, and they opened kind of themselves to the entire public and said, you can ask whatever questions you want to ask, and we're going to give you answer. Unfortunately, that turned into somehow, right, you can call it a shitstorm, right, because the people started to ask, why are you killing rainforest, right? Why are you supporting child work, right? Why are you on the palm oil, right? Why are you doing that? And what's happening in that entire Twitter feed, again, go look for hashtag Ask Nestle. You're gonna see that there are a lot of aggressive tweets out there, and at the end, Nestle is answering almost in real time in a very good manner. I need to say they do that really well, and but this is a direct, open communication, right? And it is relevant. It is relevant what Nestle states there, because that could be used against them. So what's important there is, one is you can do sentiment analysis, but it's obvious if you see the content, right, what the sentiment is. But what's more important is to record that so that data doesn't get lost. So if a user would delete his tweet, as an example, right, you can't anymore recognize where everything started, and that's the important one. That's exactly what I've been talking, and we're gonna dig into it in the webinar. This is really about social media records management.
Thank you, Patrick. The next question comes right into sentiment and pharmacovigilance. Could you please provide us the link to the sentiment approach people to evaluate potential participation in a pilot? Yes, please provide us with your contact details, and we will facilitate the contact with Dr. Beat Wiedler. Next question, what would the LSCP contribution be in a way forward? Don, would you like to answer this one?
Yeah, certainly. That would depend on where your social media initiatives stand already, in particular, where your efforts stand in regard to regulatory compliance with your evolving social media initiatives. Our domain is process and content in a regulated environment. So we would work with you in evaluating how you're using social media now and how you can most effectively use the tools and processes we recommend to ensure regulatory compliance while still being able to leverage digital media effectively. And we do that based on where you stand and helping you to put together a vision and strategy for moving forward with this. If you're interested, we can certainly discuss this further and discuss how you can use technologies such as Qumram in meeting regulatory requirements.
Thank you, Don. Would there be a possibility to talk to one of your current customers, for example, UBS, with its global approach? Patrick, that's for you.
It looks like UBS being one of the logos we've been showing. Yeah, absolutely. So UBS is not only a reference customer, right? It is a very important partner for us also to evolve. So we have multiple reference customers. We can also provide references out of the healthcare market, or even provide references from the industry analysts like Gartner. So absolutely, if you wanna approach me, and if you wanna have more details, we're gonna share our contact details at the end of the webinar. So feel free, send me an email, get in contact with myself, Patrick, or with Rudy, or with Don, and we're happy to provide further information also on the references.
The next question. I would be interested in business intelligence. Can we talk one of these days, and with whom? Patrick?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, right, I think the best way to address that question is reach out to Don, reach out to Rudy, or to myself. You're gonna see the contact details at the end of the webinar here. phone and email. And we're absolutely happy to come back to you and set up a call with Qumram experts and also LSCP experts. And no, thanks for that question. We're excited to have the opportunity to talk with you about that.
Thank you. We have corporate information governance in progress. What kind of criteria would we look for to fit this into? Don, is that a question you could answer?
That would be one that would require a fairly long and extensive discussion. So if you'd like to pursue it further, my contact information, as Patrick said, will be at the end of this, and I'd be happy to have a discussion with you about it.
Thank you. There is no regulatory pressure at the moment. Why should we become active then? I may take that.
Go for it. I think it's a very good question, right? We see there is definitely higher regulatory pressure in other industries, and like Don was presenting on one of the slides, right? You see a lot of regulations coming out or just been published recently. So I'm heavily interested in your view, Rudy. What are you answering?
Well, in our discussions with customers, we recognize that this part of the game, people tend to look at more from a regulatory side. Our recommendation is to look more at the business opportunities, getting closer to the patient, listen to the patient's voice, because over time, it will become more and more important to recognize and archive patient outcome. This will help to determine the right price you are asking in the marketplace, and therefore come back to us and discuss what kind of opportunity we could work on together.
I fully agree with you on that. I still will go back also about the risks, right? You see it with Nestle. This is not only about the regulatory side. This has also a lot to do about kind of managing and hedging the risks within the company. So about internal policies.
Society opinion, for example.
Yeah.
So here we have a little menu about where Qumram technology functions can provide benefits, not just for regulatory, as I just said, but for innovation purposes. And one example is here in conjunction with ClinPal. So what could be a next step from a more specific offering? We have a half-day workshop that we would elaborate the opportunities with you and understand together what is important to you and focus on that for the next step. Then, for example, in a digital lab where different functions could experience what this would mean and how would you keep control. So we have come to an end of this webinar, and as we say here, please stay tuned for more specific webinars to come. And you find the contact details either from Patrick or from me, and they can, of course, instantly provide also the contacts of Don. Thank you for participating today, and we look forward having you soon with us. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much, Rudy and Don, for having the opportunity to be on the webinar today with you. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. It's been my pleasure. Bye.